Hi, in this video, I want to show you how you can send information and commands to Viz so that you can use Viz graphics to display that information. I'm not going to go into deep detail about every single step. However, my plan is just to give you an overview so that you have a rough idea of what steps need to be taken in order to create your own program. Let's get started. The program you see in front of you is called VizRT. We're going to create a scoreboard. Okay, essentially it is a graphic that shows a flag, a country name, and the score of the country. The first thing we want to do is change the background because right now it's black. Let's have something more interesting. So I'm going to go up here to my server tab and select backgrounds and drag this background over this little icon over here, and that will change my background. Okay, next thing I want to do is create a master group so that we can keep everything organized. In this lower left hand corner here, this is what we call the tree view. I'm going to click this icon here to create a group, and I'm going to name this country. By double clicking on it, I will now rename it country. And the next thing I want to do is drag over a rectangle. So if I go to built-ins, if I scroll down, I'll see under default, I'll see a rectangle. Dragging this down into the tree structure, I'm going to have it as a child of the country group. And now you'll see a square appear in the preview window. Up here on the upper right, you will see some parameters that I can adjust for the rectangle. If I click on this icon as well, I can also adjust other parameters like where it's positioned, its rotation, and also its size. Okay, let me just scale this down a bit so I can see more information. Alright, let me make some changes to this rectangle. Right now it's more of a square. I'm going to make it more of a rectangle by adjusting its scaling. So I'm going to set it to single instead of locked so I can scale it disproportionately. So you can see I can type in precise values and the changes will appear in the preview. Next step I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color so that it's now a less boring white color. Let's go back here and click on the M button here for material. Okay. And as I click that, I now see two materials. I'm going to choose the blue one and drag it over the rectangle, and now it's blue in color. Next step, let's put some text into this graphic. Again, I'll go to my external controls main project folder, and I'll go to F, which stands for font, and I've got Arial regular here. I'm going to drag that down into the tree and place it next to my rectangle. All right, notice the text has already appeared here. I'm going to adjust a few properties of the text. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the text to be center justified. Let me just turn on the bounding box so you can see that we've selected it. Okay, next step, let's also change its center. So now the center of this object is right here in the middle. Okay, well, I'm going to play around with the position as well. Okay, and I'm going to play with the size. It's a little bit too big, so I'm going to scale it down, and that looks good. I'm now going to give it a sample text by clicking on this text icon here and changing its text to display Singapore. Let's put it in caps. Okay, so let me rename this now to country, lowercase. And I want to duplicate this so that I can use it for the score. If I click on the container itself, we call this a container. If I click on the container, hold down the control key and drag down, I can actually create a duplicate. I'm now going to rename this score, and let's reposition this as well. So clicking up here on this icon here, I will now change its position to 137, 125. Enter. and I'll give it a default value of 88. Okay, that looks good. Now let's create a space here for a flag. We do that first of all by creating a placeholder for the image. I'm going to duplicate this rectangle here. Okay, again holding down the control key, click and drag below the score container, and I got another rectangle. Okay, first thing I'm going to do now is to remove the material because I don't need it, and then I'm going to scale it down. Something like this, and reposition it. Okay, so now this is our placeholder for where the flag will go. Let's go ahead and put in a default flag for the moment. So I'm going to go on the images here and look for my Singapore flag. Take it, drag it down to rectangle. Now we notice that there's something wrong with the mapping now. I'm just going to adjust the mapping here and change the mapping to vertex. And there you go. So our graphic is looking pretty good now. The only thing that's missing now is probably a nice animation. So I'm going to create a simple one just to have it flip in. We create animations in Viz by setting keyframes, which is this button here. In this box here, I'm going to click my mouse and drag to the left, and this basically tells us that we are at time 0, which is the beginning. Okay, hit keyframe. I'm going to select country first. Okay, and I'm going to hit keyframe, click on this, and then I'm going to adjust something. Notice that the playhead now has gone to 50. We're now at time 50, and I'm going to rotate this 180 degrees on the x-axis, and then I'm going to click another keyframe. You can check your animation by going to the stage up here, and this line here indicates where we are, what we are looking at now. So I'm just going to click it and drag it, and just notice from 0, when I move it forward, the graphic actually spins out. So what we want to do is actually the reverse, have it go from out to in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this keyframe here, move it out here, shift it all to the back, and readjust it. So now it spins in. Okay, we can play the animation in real time by using these controls over here. So rewind, play, and that's how it looks like. Rewind, play. Okay, looks pretty good. So I'm happy with that now. I'm going to click save to save this scene. So now we come to the fun part. We want to send a command externally now from Viz to basically change this country text over here to a name of a country. Let's say, for example, Australia. First thing we need to do is bring up the console window for Viz by clicking on the C up here. And in this window here, we can actually type the commands directly. How does the command look like? Let me just bring in a command for you and show you. I'm going to copy and paste this command in. Let me describe the commands to you. The syntax basically starts with a send, lowercase. REND stands for renderer. Star is like a delimiter. And then we want to affect the tree, which is actually on this side here, right? And in the tree, we'll have to specify a path to the container that we're interested in. So for example, here, we are now interested in the country here, the lowercase country container. That means that the path would start with the root, which is uppercase country, and then lowercase country. And that's why we have a $, which stands for string, and the name of the container, followed by the other containers. Now, what are the properties we want to edit? It's the geometry of the container and the text property. And basically, we want to set it to Australia. Okay? Now, in order for commands to work in console, the Viz has to be put in what we call an on-air mode. This means it's listening to the console, right? Normally, if you type in here with the Viz in off-air mode, it will not respond. Okay? So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to hit escape just to clear this out and put this on air mode. Right? Notice the screen changes to full screen. Okay, now let's type the command in. Okay, so this is the command. Hit enter, and you'll see that now the text has changed to Australia. Okay, let's change the score as well, and that's done. Let's call up the previous one, and now we do not want to go to country, we want to go to score. Oh, sorry, lowercase score, and set the value to, let's just say 8. Hit enter, and now we change that as well. You'll see that all our flags are actually under the under the I button here, I tab, and they're all listed here. Okay, if I were to go to the Australia flag, okay, which is, here we go, AU. Okay, right click, select show properties, and can't really see it here. Let me just bring this down. You'll see that the path name is listed here. This is the path that I need to tell Viz to grab the Australia flag. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, close it, just bring this up again so we can see our tree. So now I'll go back, show my console again, put it on air, and now let's send this command. Basically what I'm trying to do is I'm doing the renderer again, tree and country, and this time I'm going to edit the flag. I'm going to change the image property and set it to this image, which is AU. Hit enter, and now Australia flag appears. Okay, moving on. Now we have one country that is in our graphic. Let's say we have a second one. I'm going to click Control, hold Control key, and create a second country, and move this country down. If we were to use the same command as before, so let's go back up to show the console again, put on air, and let's say now we scroll back to our previous commands. So we scroll to our previous commands, and for example here, we want to set now the second graphic to Belgium. Okay, you'll realize that if we were to execute this command, the first one changes, not the second one, and that is because the path that we specified is not unique. Okay, so you can see country is not unique. It can apply to this one or this one. Okay, so obviously we can change the path to make it unique so that Viz will be able to find the correct container, but this can be very tedious. So another thing I want to introduce to you is control channels. So if you go up here and click control, and under control channels, you'll see a box here which you can actually create control channels. Now, how do you create a control channel? Let's say we want to change this text here, this country here, right? Drag it up, release it, and let's give it a name as country 2. Okay. And what it does, it basically creates a unique identifier for this container, which is country 2. So let's go back on air. Let's go back a few things. Okay, Australia, right? So now let's change this to USA. And since we want to affect the second one, instead of using a path, we would use the name, which starts with ampersand of our control channel, and type in country 2. Okay, so now when we do that, the second container is the one that gets changed. Okay, so let's go back to our scene, and let's create control channels for the rest of the items here. So for example, flag, I'll call it flag 2, and score, I'll call it score 2. Okay. Now so far I've shown you typing in commands one line at a time using the console window. Okay, this can be fine for simple projects, okay, but when you have a very large project, typing in a single command is going to get really painful, especially if you want to update, let's say, even the simple one like this, update all the data on the screen. You do not want to be typing in so many commands individually. So let me introduce you to another program called Viz Send. And this program is actually an external program, and it comes pre-installed with Viz. Okay, so let's get it hooked up. First of all, click connect and choose the machine you want to control, which is localhost. Pick the protocol, which is the default right now. Click connect. In this animation, scene that we just created, we also have an animation. Remember, so we can reverse. To start and then play. Notice it comes in. Okay, so I'm now going to show you the command to trigger this animation. Let's type it up here. We do not need to type in the word send anymore. Okay, we start straight away with the command, which is renderer. This time we want to affect the stage, so we go to stage and then we just send the start command. Okay, click send and it plays the animation. Okay, so now let's say we want to send a whole bunch of commands that basically says rewind to the beginning of the animation, change the values, and then play the animation. Okay, and that is where the script button comes in really handy. In C drive, okay, I'm going to create a text file called vizsend1.txt. Okay, and I'm going to type in all the commands that I want to send to Viz here. So for example, I'm going to move the animation to the beginning. I'm going to change the first country to Germany, set the score to 1, and set its flag to the correct German flag. And then the second one now, using control channels, I'm going to set the country to Italy, score 2, and the flag to the Italian flag. And then I'm going to start the whole animation. Okay, so here, click save. And back in VizSend, I will click on the script button. As I scroll down, I'll see this thing called VizSend1. Click open and watch what happens immediately. Okay, the script starts to play and everything gets changed as what I wanted. Well, let's take a look at the commands we've been using so far. If we use absolute paths, okay, we have to make sure that the paths are unique. That's one problem. If we use control channels, okay, one of the issues with control channels is we have to try to memorize the things that we want to change. For example, yes, we can now directly reference flag 2. However, we have to memorize all these things: image set, text set, and are we editing geometry, image, and a whole lot of other commands as well. It would be nice if we had some plugins to fill in these gaps for us so that we can access all these parameters directly. And that's where data pool comes in. So let's go back to Viz, and inside built-ins, under container plugins, you'll see this thing called data. Inside here, you'll see data pool plugins. There's this thing here called data text, for example, and let me just show you how to use it. This is the scene that we had before, and we have the two countries, right? Previously, we were accessing this country either using control channels or the path. Let's drag this control text now, this data text onto country, and click on the data pool icon, and we'll see here that we have some parameters we can choose. Right? I won't go through everything, but let's just talk about this one here called the field name. Same with the control channels, okay, we just give it a name that uniquely identifies this container. So I'm just going to call this country 1, okay, and now I'm also going to add the data text to the second country and call it country 2. Okay, so now our scene has two data pools called data text. Let's go ahead and send a command to change the country names again. Let's put the Viz on air and bring up Viz send. So I'm gonna paste in the command. Basically the command is like this: renderer, it's a function, okay, so we don't go to tree, function, and data pool, data, set. And we name the data pool field to be country 1. So now we're going to set it to, let's just change this to Singapore. Okay, and click send. Notice it changes to Singapore. Now you'll see that using data pool, okay, let me just copy this and paste it here just below the other commands. It's much easier to remember the syntax here because it's just data pool. You actually set the data pool based on the field name that we're given, and it takes care of all these other parts like geometry, text. We don't have to remember all this stuff, okay? And there are many different plugins, data pool plugins, that will change different properties of the container. We have a different graphic right now. It's a stock graphic, and what we have here, if you look at the tree, is a rectangle for the back, and we have a stock value, which is the name of the stock, the value itself, and then we have a group with inside we actually have an arrow, okay? We have none for when the stock does not change, an up arrow for when the stock goes up, and then we have a down arrow when the stock goes down. And then we have a change value here indicating by how much the stock has changed. Okay, this can be a positive or a negative number. Okay, the data text, you already know. What it does, it allows us to change the text property of a container, right? And this one is called name. For the value, it's called price, and the change is called change. All right. This one here is new. It's called the data selector, and what it does is if we set this field name to a value, it will change what appears and does not appear depending on the value. Okay. So let me just show you what I mean. For data pool, we also have a way to set the values for testing directly within Viz. Okay, so if we go to scene settings and under plugin, okay, we see a little box here. Let me just delete all this stuff. Okay, there's a whole bunch of properties. But in this little box here, we can actually control and set a data pool value. So if you go to data selector here, we've called it arrow, right? So let's go to scene, and I'm going to type in arrow equals, oops, it's case sensitive, so arrow equals 0. Okay, nothing happens. Let's change it to 1, and you see that 1 refers to up. Okay, and let's change it to 2, and we now get the down arrow. Okay, so it's 0 index based, which means this is 0, 1, 2. Okay, and again, this is how we can test it internally very quickly to see what the different values will do. All right, I now want to use Viz Send, okay, to basically set all the values at once. So let me call up. So now I prepared all the commands. Let me just go through with you. So the first one is render function data pool data set name toggle. So we want to set, sorry, not toggle, Google. So we want to set the name of the stock to Google. We want to set the price to this price, and the change to this one, and 1 being the up arrow, okay, because the stock is going up here. Okay, so I'm going to save this as vizsendstock.txt. Okay, so let's go and put it on air and call up vizsend and open my script. All right, now once I hit open, it's gonna play the script back. Okay, and you can see now it's changed it to Google, blah blah blah, and the stocks and the arrow have changed. Okay, the next thing I want to introduce you to is VizScript. VizScript is VizRT's built-in scripting language, okay, and you can use it in your scene to implement some kind of logic. For example, this stock data that we have here, it would be nice if the arrow was going up, that the text here would become green, right? And if the arrow is pointing downwards, the text here would turn red. First, let's open up the text that we want to control. So in this case, it would be stock DP here. And if you look here, what we want to control is this change value here. Okay, so we need to drag in a VizScript plugin onto this container, which can be found under built-ins. under container plugins, global. Okay, and you can see a script icon here. Let me just show you. Drag and drop it onto change. When you do that, okay, you get a new icon here. Click on it, and you have a little field down here that you can type in. All right, so let's copy and paste the script in, and let me just go through the script with you. We define a variable of type container, okay, and when the script on init resets the variable C to this container, okay, we tell Viz to find this container called VizScript change, which means we need to change this name here to VizScript underscore change. Okay, and then once we find it, okay, we want to register a callback, okay, when the text change, so that we can respond to the change in text. Okay, so this is the callback that we have defined. So if the text changes, basically if it's a positive number, it goes, we want it to turn green, and if it's a negative number, we want it to turn red. All right, so first what we need to do is define two variables, okay, and set them as color, and the up variable basically becomes green, the down arrow is defined as red. Okay, declare another variable called change, and if the change is a negative number, we will set the material to down, and if it's a positive number, we set it to up. Okay, which means we need to give this container a material, and we go up here under the M for material, and we just give it a dummy number, dummy color for now. So let's just drop this on. So notice it's it turns green. Okay, so let's compile this. Okay, and now we're going to use VizSend to change the values, and then the script should take care of the color for this text. So let's put the Viz on air, okay, and I'm going to show you the commands we're going to send. Essentially, you should be familiar with this already. We're going to rewind the animation. We're going to set the stock to Samsung. This is its price at the moment. It has gone down, and we now show the red arrow, okay. So let me save this and call up VizSend. Close this. Okay. So we're going to go and open up the script. All right, and it's this one here. And notice it changed everything, and the color changed accordingly. Okay. Let's change it again back to Google, and let's see whether this changes back to green. Okay. So script. Let's find our script, which was this one, and now we change it back to Google, and everything changes. Okay, notice the animation did not play. I suspect it's because we do not have an animation. Yeah, okay, we don't have an animation yet, but this is essentially how we can use VizScript to execute some logic that we want to have within the scene. Okay. So if we had more than one country, let's say 5, it would be much easier for us to actually create a data structure. First of all, let's create a scoreboard with 5 countries. Over here, I'm going to create a group so that we can group all the countries together. I will call these countries, and I'll move this country inside here. There are certain plugins I would like to show you that make designing pretty easy. For example, this country, I can actually duplicate it under built-ins, built-ins container, Cocoa. Drag Cocoa onto country, go over here, and in this case it's 4 more copies, and then hit execute. So I have now 4 more copies. Okay, the names are pretty messed up now, so I'm going to remove Cocoa, and I'm going to use this thing called Corina. Drag it onto countries. I'm going to rename country, okay, with a little underscore, and then I'm going to set the starting index at 1. So execute. It all becomes country 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Next thing I want to do is arrange these in a nice rows. Okay, a single column of 5 rows, and I can use the arrange plugin. Drag and drop it here. I want number of rows to be 5, 1 column, and now I'll set the row offset by clicking and dragging my mouse. you'll see I can actually have a nice neat 5 rows. Click on the parameter here, on this icon here, I can actually bring up my graphic so it sits nicely in the screen. Okay, so now what I want to do is define an array of 5 elements. Okay, and let's do that now by going to built-ins, data, and select the data array plugin. Okay, and I'm going to drag it onto countries. Inside here, I'm going to call this, okay, and I'm going to define it as an array of 5 elements. And I've already predefined a type here called country, and if I click on this, okay, you'll see that there's a country, a flag, and a score of type string. Okay, so there's a country, a flag, and the score. Okay, and there's a specific way you need to arrange the structure. Basically, data array goes on the parent group, and subsequent containers will be the elements in the array. Okay, so this is basically how you set up a data array. Under plugins, we can actually type in a data pool command here, an assignment, and essentially it should change the values here within the scene. Okay, so let me show you the syntax. For those of you who are familiar with JavaScript or JSON, this looks pretty similar. So all you need to do is, this corresponds to element 0. Okay, so if we copy and paste, all right, and we want to set the second one, let's say to 22. Okay, we would change this, and 23, right, and we would separate these with a comma. Okay, and you'll see that the values are changing. Okay, so this is a quick test. Now let's go ahead and use VizSend to change all the values externally. So again, we put this on air. Let's prepare a text file. Okay, so this is our text file. Essentially, we will rewind the animation. We want to set the data pool, okay, to these. So the 5 elements, well, first one will be Germany, second one Brazil, and Japan, and then Korea, followed by the USA. We also set the flags appropriately. Okay, let's see what happens. Let me call up VizSend. Maybe bring this to the side here. Load the script. Okay, and there you go. So in this particular demo, I'm going to show you how to use data reader, or how you use data reader to read Excel files. We have the same graphic as before, the 5 countries, and this time, however, I want to go to built-ins, control plugins, and select data. And under data, if you go down here, you'll see this thing called data reader. Take it and drag it over to parent folder of our graphic. Okay, I've already set the query to be an Excel file, and this is where I've placed my Excel file. I've called it exceldata.xls, and let me go ahead and show you what the file looks like. So this is the Excel file. I've got 4 columns basically, and under country I've got all the different countries, the scores, and then the flags. Okay, so I want now Viz to read this file directly. So filling this in, the sheet is now called countries. So if I fill in countries here, the key, because I'm reading it into a data array, okay, it's going to have a key which is here. I tell it to read the different fields, country, score, and flag, which is in the headers up here. And the DP field name is countries. That's because the name of our data array is countries, right? So let me close Excel. And in order to load it, I will click the load button here. And when I do that, the values are read in from Excel. Next thing I want to show you is how to use data reader to read an XML file. Let me show you how the XML file looks like. I have a root node, data, and then countries. And within countries, I have a collection of country. with the following properties. I have a score, a flag, and the country name itself. So let's go back to Viz. And first of all, I want to assign an array of 5 different countries. So as you can see here, I've got 5 countries that I want to display and extract data to. Okay, and this array has 3 elements called country, flag, and score. Now let's take a look at the other parameters in data reader. I specify an XPath which goes to data country's country. This is the path to where my data sits, right? So I specify it here. Next thing I want to do is tell it from which row, which is the first one, it's 0 index, so it will be 0. And then I want to read 5 rows. And when data reader reads all the data, I want it to be placed into this data pool field called countries, of which type is a data array. Once all this is set up, you can go ahead and click load, and you'll notice down here the values will change. So far for the data reader, we've been triggering it by clicking the actual button here, the load button, okay, which of course is not practical when the engine is when the artist is on air in the on-air mode, right? So we want to trigger this load button by sending a command to the engine. So first things first, let's reset all these values here. So let's go on air and reset it to the previous values by loading the script, data array, open, and basically everything resets back. So now we want to trigger the load button, which is inside this data reader. And one way is to create a control channel. So I'll drag this container up here, release it, and I'm going to call this DR for data reader. Click OK. And now I'm just going to put everything on air, get my Viz send. Now that I know the control channel name is called DR, the command that I should use looks like this. So even if there are multiple data readers inside the scene, I will only specifically trigger this data reader's load function. Click send, and it changes. So again, this can be an external program that you have done and that just sends this command, and you can see it updates the graphic. I'm going to show you now some real-life interfaces that have been designed externally to control Viz. One of them is a SOC interface, which is here, that basically reads an Excel file and also grabs graphics from the hard drive. So I'm going to click import here from the Excel file, and under the graphics tab, you'll see now that it's read in the information. The user will select the team, and from there they can put in a 4-letter code for the team. So let's put this one. You can also select the color for the team's jersey, double click. Let's say we select green for this guy, right? And so on and so forth, okay? Now, there's also a lineup tab here which the operator can assign the different players, okay? All this logic is actually built into this interface, all right? It's nothing to do with Viz at the moment, so you can make it as sophisticated as you want. Notice also there's a logo here, which is actually read from the hard drive, okay? And this will later be sent to Viz. So the user will click take, and what this does, it actually sends all this data to Viz, all right? And then when you click start, the graphic will start to play, as you'll see here. The player list is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As you can see, this is the rundown here. The substitutes are here. I keyed in the coach, which is Mr. X. You will see Mr. X as the coach. Let me just go ahead and turn on the console as well, so that you can see all the commands coming into Viz. Okay, the screen is going to get a bit crowded, but I think at least you'll get to see what's going on. If I click continue here, okay, what will happen is the animation will move on to the next one. So I'm going to click continue now. See the command came in to continue, right? And then now we move on to the formation screen, okay, for the first team. Notice now that the jerseys are in the green that I selected here, okay? So I sent the color over to the graphic as well. And now we're going to go to team B, the second team, which I typed in Mr. Y, and I click continue again. And this time I selected blue for the jersey, so now it becomes blue, right? let me just go ahead and change this, okay, by double clicking on it. I am now going to select orange, click OK, and now instead of having white on orange, I'm going to have it black on orange. Okay, I hit in my interface again, I'm going to hit take, so all the data is sent to the graphic again. Click start, and now when I hit continue and we see the lineup, it's now orange, black on orange. Okay, so again, I'm controlling all this from this interface here. In the scene itself, let me just show you the scene real quick. Most of it is done through data pool. Right, so we got a data image here for all the jerseys. Okay, and for example, the name here would be a data text, and I also can set the orange color using a data material. Okay, all right, so let me describe to you some other elements that we can do. So for example, there's a corner ticker in Viz. Okay, we can have up to 3 layers of graphics simultaneously on air. So for example, while this big graphic here is on air, we can have a small bug at the top here that shows some vital information, right? Like for example, the score. So this corner ticker here, if I click take and hit start, okay, it's going to come up. As you can see, there's a time here, the score, which I type into the interface 24, and the 4-letter code for the team. At the top here also, there's a little color code, so we know which team which jersey belongs to which team. Okay. Now for time, we can Viz actually has an internal clock, an internal timer as well. So we can actually set the start time here, and we can also say this is the first half, so on and so forth, and then we click update, and as you can see, it starts counting up for the game time. Alright, so let's take this graphic out by clicking the out button, and notice it only triggers that particular layer here, which is the front layer. Take out the lineup, so I move back to this main interface here, and at the bottom here you'll see continue. I'm going to move this out of the way and hit continue off screen. So it plays to the next one, second team, the formation, and then take it all out. Okay. Something else you can show is maybe the league table, for example. So in here, again, all this is done externally. So this is something that the programmer would do. I can select all these different teams, so on and so forth. Okay, this is nothing to do with Viz. All right, this is just an external interface, and I can just put random data here. Okay. Okay, I'll just do a take, and you can see in the console the data coming in. Okay, so I do a take, it goes in, and if I would hit the start to play in the graphic, here comes my graphic. Okay, so as I select it here, these teams now appear here as I've selected, and the data for the scores are here. Okay, so this is a real life example of how Viz can be controlled externally.